Oh, hi. I'm Tom Iovino from Pinellas 18. I'd like to welcome you to my home. I love living in Florida. The glorious sunshine and being so close to the beach, some of the key selling points. But one of the things we have to be careful of, especially living this close to the water, are hurricanes. As we know, for the past few years, hurricanes can bring a lot of devastation to the coastal areas. And what I want to do today is show you how to prepare your home and one of the most vulnerable areas in it from the storm winds, and that are the windows in your house. But what I'd like to do is take you on a tour of my house to show you everything we've done so far to get it ready for the season. According to the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes at flash.org, 80% of the homes during Hurricane Andrew that had major structural damage lost their garage door first. That's why when I replaced my garage door, I chose a very heavy-duty model. This extra bracing, the reinforced tracks and reinforced rollers allow this garage door to handle up to 150 mile-an-hour wind. Another thing I did is replace my original windows with these wind-rated windows. These are rated to stay in their frames up to 140 miles an hour. However, they're not impact resistant, and that's the reason why we're cutting plywood shutters today. But why is it important to cover your windows in the first place? You have to understand that during the high winds of a hurricane, even the smallest items, toys, yard furniture, flower pots, even something as large as a barbecue grill can become a projectile and go through a window, and that would allow the high wind and rain to come into your house. And even if you clean up your own yard, your neighbor may not have his yard fully cleaned either, so it's important to have your windows protected. When it comes to protecting your windows, there are plenty of options out there, and they can fit a wide range of budgets. While new materials and designs are being developed to improve window protection, here are some of the main shutters available today. Different types of shutters may be required to protect the different types of windows, doors, and openings on your home. Electric or manual roll-down shutters offer the most convenient and secure window protection. In a matter of minutes, the metal shutters roll out of permanently installed boxes above the windows. They are an excellent choice for hard-to-reach windows. Roll-down shutters can be very expensive and require professional installation and maintenance. Almost as easy while providing excellent window protection are metal accordion shutters. These shutters are permanently installed, slide horizontally in tracks, and are especially good at protecting large areas such as porches and patios. The homeowners can secure an entire home in just a few minutes. Accordion shutters are the medium to expensive price range. Bahama shutters are hinged at the top with telescopic arms in the bottom, and they reduce the amount of sunlight entering the window. Lowering and latching the shutters converts it from sun protection to storm protection. Traditional colonial shutters attach on each side of the window with hinges that allow the shutters to be closed and locked for storm protection. These are usually metal or reinforced vinyl and are in the medium cost range. Fabric shields are attached with permanently installed anchors and stretch across the window to absorb impact. You can't see through the translucent PVC woven fabric, but it allows light to enter the window. It is in the medium cost range, and once installed, the house can be ready for a storm in an hour or two. Panel shutters made of corrugated steel, aluminum, or polycarbonate slide into pre-installed rails above and below the window or door, or secured with fasteners. These panels provide excellent protection and fall into the medium cost range. The polycarbonate panels let light enter the window, allow plenty of time, as it may take several hours to put up the panels when a storm threatens. Panels are in the medium price range. And finally, good old-fashioned plywood provides the most cost-effective window protection and may be the only protection many of us can afford. While plywood is not as strong as the other window protection devices we've talked about, it still offers a much greater chance your home will survive the storm with minimal damage. Plywood is the most cost-effective and widely available window covering, and that's my choice. If you're going to start with plywood, the first thing you have to begin with are accurate measurements of your windows. Here we've got a typical window on my house, and what I want to do to measure is take the tape measure and get a very accurate inside measurement of the window. That's 53 inches wide across the inside. That's 38¼ inches. And here's a tip. You want to make sure you label each window as you go along. This way you guarantee that the right piece of plywood goes over the right window. In this case, it's the back south window. South window. Once you're done with your measurements, here's a tip that can help save you some time and money. What I did was I took a regular sheet of graph paper and I drew a scale model of a sheet of plywood on it. All plywood comes in sheets that are 4 foot by 8 foot or 48 by 96 inches. Then what I did was I took my measurements and actually made scale models of each piece of plywood I needed to cut out. By laying these pieces on my scale model, what I can do is figure out the best yield per sheet. This way I only have to buy the plywood I need. Now that I have my shopping list, it's off to the store. Before you buy any plywood to cover your windows, first you need to know a little bit about what you're looking for. Joining me today is Joe from Home Depot, who's going to tell us a little bit about what we should be looking for. Hi Joe, how you doing?
Real good. And yourself today?
Doing great.
All right.
Joe, what should I be looking for as a bare minimum for covering my windows?
As a bare minimum, as we get into hurricane season, you need to be looking at 1/2 inch thickness plywood. Preferably 5/8. Reason for the difference is the thickness of the plywood, because when hurricane season comes, things like this door happen. We have airborne projectiles that like to pierce things.
And Joe, you're telling me that something can get airborne and blow right through?
Lots of things will get airborne. You'll have air conditioners, garbage cans, mailboxes, TV antennas, trees. Once they become airborne, they're very sharp projectiles and can do things like puncture the perimeter of your house. And what you're out to do is protect the perimeter from that air infiltration.
You definitely don't want the wind inside the house.
No, because if the wind comes in, then other things happen that
aren't too nice.
Aren't very nice.
So I understand there's different kinds of plywood. There's interior and exterior.
Right.
I should be looking for exterior for sure.
You should always be looking for exterior plywood. It's not going to have a pretty finish on it. That's the nature of exterior plywood. It's going to have knot holes on it and various things. For storm protection, you're not worried about what it looks like. You're worried about its structural integrity.
Sure.
And exterior plywoods are all rated at the factory for certain loads, even with those knot holes and voids and whatever they have in them. The nature of plywood, there's a lot of glue in it, and the glue and the plies is what gives it its integrity.
Now, Joe, there are some things that are obviously cheaper than exterior grade plywood out there. Things like particle board and really thin, like 1/4 inch plywood. Why shouldn't I choose those?
Well, there's cheaper things. 1/4 inch plywood, I'll show you here in a minute. MDF, you should never use. It's a fiber board, great for furniture and things. Well, but when you're talking about wind and water and stuff, MDF will come apart in water, and particle board will also.
So it just doesn't have any water protection?
No, it's a very dense material. It's made for indoor use. You don't want to use it on the outside.
Okay, well, show us some of the different thicknesses of plywood we have here.
And for today, what I've got are 3 different units here. We've got a 1/4 inch plywood, and just looking at the nature of this beast, you can see that it bends too much. You put a wind load on there of 7,500 miles an hour.
That's pretty flimsy.
That's pretty flimsy. It's going to snap on you.
Okay.
The other part is, as projectiles come at it, they're going to go right through it like it was a piece of paper.
Okay.
In the middle here, we have 1/2 inch plywood. This is the bare minimum that you want to be using for storm protection. 1/2 inch plywood comes in 3 and 4 ply. It really doesn't make a lot of difference for what we're using it for. Either one will work fine.
Okay.
As you move up, then you've got your 5/8 plywood. This is probably the best way to protect your house. And as you can see from the thickness here, you start throwing bricks and ceiling, roofing tiles and things at it, it's going to have a better chance to deflect it or absorb it.
Well, definitely it looks a whole lot thicker, and I'm sure the extra thickness would provide a lot more strength.
Right.
And as far as resistance to a wind load on the...
Yeah, there's going to be less flex than either of the other two.
Now, obviously, we've got plywood, we've got the covering, but another important component of this is the fasteners.
How are you going to mount it?
Okay. And when it comes to fasteners, there's really a large assortment. For instance, there's this product, which is very, very interesting and unique. And joining me today from Home Depot is Dave, who's going to explain to us a little bit about what these products are. Can you tell us about these?
Well, these are Plylocks. Plylocks are basically one of those last kind of second issues that you, if the storms come in, you don't have much time, you can't set up your other kind of fasteners. Plylocks, quick, easy to use.
Okay.
You simply just mount them to either side of your plywood. Now, it's best to have the plywood cut to about 1/4 inch short of the dimensions of your window, so you can have an 1/8 of an inch channel all the way around your window.
Okay.
And what you're simply going to do is, with Plylocks, you place them in the corners, you pop this into your window frame, and you just simply push them in.
Okay, and it just holds with the spring pressure.
And it just holds them right in place. Nothing can get through it. Good to go.
And I'll keep it from pulling out as well. That's good.
Yes, sir.
Now, say I want a more traditional kind of fastener in my house. If I have a wood frame house, for instance, what would I be looking for?
Sure, you can get screws like this. These are just kind of what they call hanger bolts. Basically, you just drill this right into the wood, and then it gives you another threaded piece, which allows you to fasten a wing nut right onto it to secure the plywood in place.
Okay, if I have a masonry house, obviously it's going to be different. I can't just use a regular lag screw or wood screw to put the product up. What options do I have for masonry homes?
Well, you also have a similar product like the hanger bolts that were for wood, but these are specifically for masonry. They're also made by the Tapcon company. Tapcons are also good use for masonry homes. Basically, each one comes with a drill bit to drill right through the masonry, and then you would just simply thread this into the hole that you've drilled, and it provides the same kind of support as this, where it also gives you a threaded side on the opposite side, so you can tighten down a wing nut over the plywood and hold it in place.
Now these plastic pieces, what do they do?
That's basically more for an aesthetic portion of it. If in these situations, you can leave these on your house all year round. You put these little rubber boots on them, and that basically keeps it from, if you have kids running around or anything like that, catching into kind of like a rough edge of the screw.
Oh, sure, that could be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I remember the good old days when we used to use a lot of lead shields.
Yeah.
I used to drill a hole and put a lead shield into the hole to screw into masonry.
Sure.
Do you still have that option here?
Yeah, you could still do that. They have what they call caulk-in anchors, the same kind of premise. There's also drop-in anchors, which you just place, you drill your hole a little bit bigger than the anchor itself, and once you drop that in and you put a bolt into it, it expands so it holds itself inside the masonry, and then the bolt itself is attached to the anchor itself.
Okay. As far as pull-out strength, obviously that's a concern. How effective are all these products?
Well, to be honest with you, all of them are pretty darn sturdy. These ones in particular are rated as hurricane protection. So if you ever have any issues with getting different windows or anything like this, this is a safe and guaranteed way to hold things in, as well as the Tapcons. The Plylocks, like I said, it's kind of a last-minute thing. It's still strong, still holds things into place. But if you have the time to prepare ahead of time, always go with something along these lines.
Well, thanks, Dave, for taking the time to explain these to me.
No problem at all.
Sounds good. I know I'm going to have to pick up a few of these today. So
Excellent.
Thanks for your help. Without a doubt, the best time to buy your plywood is before the storm arrives. This way you've got your selection of what you want to pick. You don't have to wait in line for it. One very important thing to remember about plywood: it's big, it's awkward, and it's heavy. If you need help to handle it, be sure to ask somebody. Now here's something I can't forget. These 2x4 studs are going to help stiffen the panels that go over my sliding glass doors. Because it's such a large opening, it's going to need some help. To really secure the 2x4s to my plywood against hurricane force winds, I'm going to use both construction adhesive and deck screws. Waterproof and weatherproof. Here's exactly what I need. Some hanger bolts and some Plylocks. If you've got a truck, you can take all your material home with you. If not, the home center can deliver it for a fee, or you can rent a truck from the home center for an hour or so. No matter what vehicle you're using, a strong hand from the home center staff will help you get your material loaded.
Hey Tom, how you doing?
Hey Tom, ready to get to work?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. As I found out from loading the truck, plywood is very heavy and awkward, so get a friend to help you do some of the heavy lifting. Tony is going to help me with some of the shuttering for my house, and I'm going to help him get his house secured for the hurricane season. We're stacking the wood temporarily on the porch to leave room for work in the garage. We've got a lot of work ahead of us today. First things first, I've got to get the truck back to the store. Now that you've gotten your plywood home from the home center, you have to decide how you're going to cut it down to size to fit your windows. And on my table here, I've got a few options. The first and the most trusty is the old standby, the hand saw. This will work no matter where you are. This can go out in the field with you, and it doesn't need power to operate. The next step up is known as a jigsaw or a saber saw. This is a powered saw with a reciprocating blade. The blade moves up and down. This does a very good job cutting through plywood. The only thing is, though, it's very difficult to get a very straight cut with this. You do want to use a guide when you cut along with this to make sure you get the straightest cut possible. The tool that makes fast work of all plywood on most job sites and for most homeowners is this, the circular saw. What this is, it's a saw with a circular blade. And what it does is it actually cuts very quickly and very cleanly through plywood. What you want to make sure, though, is you carefully mark the line you want to cut, and also give yourself a batten or some sort of fence you can ride your saw against. This makes it easier for you to follow a straight line. And this here is the Cadillac of them all. This is a table saw. It has a very flat, level work surface, very large. You can rest large sheets of plywood on. It has a powerful motor with a 10-inch saw blade, and this can make very short work of plywood or framing timbers. I have to take a moment to talk about tool safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now let's get a material and start the project. It's important to have a good sturdy surface, strong enough to support a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of plywood. Sawhorses will do the job, or use a workbench like I have here. Let's get started. There are two basic ways to cover the windows with plywood. My windows have a ledge, so I'll add 4 inches to the top and each side. I've got my window measurements written down, so the first thing I'll do is measure and mark the plywood. While you're not trying to win a home decorating award for your shutters, a reasonably straight line will help ensure that the cut plywood will adequately cover the windows. A square is great to use, but a yardstick or even a fairly straight piece of lumber will do the job. I'm going to use a circular saw with a medium tooth blade to cut the plywood. This gives a fairly smooth edge, but still cuts quickly enough through the plywood. If your saw has a guide like this one, it'll help in cutting a straight line. If not, a piece of straight lumber can help. But even without a guide, you should be able to cut a straight enough line in this project by just following the line drawn on the plywood. Well, now that we've cut the plywood, we have to drill the holes for the hanger fasteners. To drill the holes, we have several options. Portable cordless drills should be used only if they're a professional grade drill and you have multiple batteries and a fast charger. It's pretty hard work for a drill, and most lightweight cordless drills will give out after a few holes. A good corded drill should have no problem drilling holes in plywood, but drilling and screwing the hangers into masonry can prove difficult for smaller drills and may slow you down. Now this hammer drill has the power to drill into any material, and the hammer action will facilitate drilling in masonry. The manufacturer recommends spacing the fasteners 12 inches apart at 2.5 inches from the edge, so I'll measure it out. The instructions on the hangers call for 3/8 inch holes in the plywood. Now that we've finished drilling the holes, let's take the plywood out to the window. When you're sure the plywood is centered, hold the plywood in place while you drill a starter hole through one of the initial holes. This part of the screwer has the threads that actually fit this wing nut. which is really convenient because it's the wing nut and washer all at once. Makes it easy for you to put on with just your hands, and also distributes the load around the window, giving it a better bite to hold on against the wind. By using the hammer drill to finish the rest of your holes while the plywood's already in place, you're guaranteed that all your holes in the concrete will match up. Once all the hanger bolts are placed, you screw on the wing nuts and you're done. This window's finished. Only 9 more to go. Now here's a tip that'll save you a lot of time and frustration later. Once you get these panels up and installed, you want to carefully mark where they're located. Believe me, each one is a custom fit, and you don't want to have to sort these things out when a storm's bearing down. And that's all there is to it. One really nice thing about this fastener system is it has these plastic sleeves which slide over the bolts when it's not in use. Not only does it protect people from bumping into the sharp corners, it also protects the threads and keeps them from getting damaged. Another option you have for securing plywood to your windows are these. These are called ply locks. They're little spring clips that actually clip onto the side of a piece of plywood. Now what you have to do with this is you have to make sure you cut your plywood 1/4 of an inch smaller in diameter than the inside of your window opening. Once they're attached to the side of the plywood, all you have to do is press them into place and squeeze the piece back. There we go. With a sharp push. Very simple. Look inside most Florida homes and no doubt you'll find one of these, a sliding glass door. Not only are these made of glass, which makes them vulnerable to a hurricane's winds, but they're also very large, which makes them a challenge to cover with plywood. But with a few tips and a few extra cuts, you can get plywood shutters to cover these with no trouble. I've already taken careful measurements in my doors, so let's go to the shop and make those cuts. The next thing I want to do is take a piece of 2x4 lumber. This is a common construction grade lumber. What I want to do is I want to cut it to size to fit over the sheet of plywood. This way, when I attach it, it'll act as a stiffener and keep the board from flexing in the wind. And notice I'm not even going to take measurements. I'm just going to use the piece of plywood as my ruler. To help make sure these 2x4 braces stay in place during the high winds, I'm going to rely on 2 fasteners to make sure they stay put. One is this construction adhesive. This is an outdoor, weather-rated construction adhesive. It'll stand up to water and really glue this 2x4 to this piece of plywood. The other system I'm going to rely on are a series of deck screws screwed into the board as well. What makes these screws special is that they're rated for outdoor use. When you buy your screws, what you want to look for is any sort of coating, like galvanizing, or these are coated in plastic, that will prevent rust from taking place. As long as you can keep these screws from rusting, they're going to be a lot stronger. Let's get started. Now what you want to do is take the 2x4 and place it on the plywood, or in my case, under the plywood. I'm using clamps, but you can always use a helper to hold the pieces as you install them. Just make sure they're nice and even on both ends. I'm going to tighten the ends, make sure they're flush, and apply another clamp. And we'll clamp a third one on the end. To make driving the screw easier, I'm going to be using a combination drill and driver bit. This has an adapter piece that goes into the front of the frame that sits in the drill. What happens is on one side it has a drill bit that'll pre-drill and countersink for the screw. The other side is a screwdriver, which will actually drive the screw in. Believe me, it takes a lot of time off drilling and driving. The next step is to flip the bit and start driving screws. Why screws? Screws have a lot more holding power than any nail ever could. Believe me, when the wind starts to blow and these start to take the force, you want something that's going to hold. After carefully placing my plywood to ensure I have enough coverage on both sides of the window frame, what I'm going to do is use this pencil to go through the through holes to carefully mark where I'm going to be drilling into the concrete to provide support. $37. $37. Now here's a tip that'll help you lift the other piece into place. What I did was I put the full width sheet on the bottom. This is by far the heavier sheet. I'll make the lighter one just a little bit easier to lift in place when the time comes to put it up. And just repeat with the top section. And there's one well-protected sliding glass door. Now after you've taken all the time, energy, and effort to cut your plywood shutters to size, the last thing you want to do is have to come back again next year and do all the work again. The easiest way to extend the life of your plywood shutters is to use a good exterior primer and house paint on them, and that way it'll keep the water off of the shutters, extending their life significantly. And while it's important to cover the face of each board, the most critical areas are wherever you drilled through and also on the edges, because that's where water can definitely infiltrate and split your layers apart on your plywood. When you eventually place the top coat on these shutters, what you want to do is choose a good exterior paint. Again, this is going to be exposed to a lot of rain and weather when it's up on your house during a hurricane. So you definitely want to use a good exterior base paint which will repel moisture. Be sure to apply a nice even coat, not too thick. You want the primer to go on first, and that makes way for the paint. The next important question is, when should you take your storm panels down? You have to remember that being inside a shuttered house is a very, very dark experience. All light is blocked off because of the plywood shutters. As soon as the threat of a storm passes, it's a good time to take the shutters off and open up your windows, especially if your power is out and it's hot outside. And when you don't need your storm shutters, the best thing to do is keep them someplace dry. Water is the enemy of plywood. It can lead to rot, it can lead to delamination. Finding someplace like a garage or a storage shed is a great place to put them until you need them. So hopefully we've been able to show you that it's not impossible to protect your home's windows with plywood. You just have to remember a few things. Number one, measure very carefully. This way you're guaranteed that your window covering will fit perfectly and you'll have a minimum of waste on your plywood. Number two, get a friend. This stuff is heavy. You want to have somebody to help you lift the sheets to get them home and also to get them around your yard and your shop as you cut them to pieces. The third thing is to start early. The time to start protecting your windows for a hurricane isn't when one is right off the coast. You want to allow yourself plenty of time, especially if you're working in the heat, to get the job done right without hurting yourself. How much did it cost? It really wasn't as expensive as you might think. The plywood, fasteners, and even transportation home from the home center cost less than $300 to do 10 windows on my house. That's a small amount to pay for peace of mind when the storm winds start to blow.